Good morning, Neuro Nerds. It's Austin back with you to make my next video before we dive into a bunch of complex pathophysiology on different neurologic disorders and diseases. I thought it would be a good idea for us to just lay the foundation for all of those neurologic disorders and diseases by going briefly over neuroanatomy. I can't say it's going to be basic because I don't think there's anything really basic about our nervous system. But I do think it's important for us to understand the functions of our nervous system. And so in successive videos, I will go into a little bit more detail about each specific area of our nervous system. But today, I kind of want to give a rough overview of the brain. Brain. So what we're looking at right now is the cerebrum. It is the largest portion of our brain. The cerebrum is made up of two hemispheres connected by the corpus callosum, and then each hemisphere is made up of four lobes. So you have your frontal lobe in red, parietal lobe in yellow, temporal lobe in blue, and occipital lobe in green. So the frontal lobe is where most of our motor initiation begins, or like our motor planning really begins. Our frontal lobe is also responsible for our personality, our decision making, our complex thought processes, our working memory, being able to have foresight and understand reward. But there are multiple areas within the frontal lobe that go beyond just our working memory and personality and our motor initiation. And so we'll go into that here in just a little bit. So our parietal lobe in yellow is where our primary somatosensory cortex exists, and somatosensation is kind of an umbrella term that encapsulates any sensory information our brain gets from our internal organs, our skin, our muscles and tendons, and our joints, okay? So think of this as like your sense of touch center. But it's more than just touch, because there's a lot of different ways we can kind of describe what we're feeling when we touch something, right? So pain, difference in temperature, whether something is soft, sharp, dull, right? Pressure, so like when you're standing on your feet, you can feel the pressure of the ground beneath you. You can also tell which portion of your feet is under more pressure than the other, right? So if I hold most of my weight in my heels, I'm going to feel a lot more pressure through my heels than I am my forefoot. And then the other big sensory system that we haven't talked about yet, which is not a household term, so I don't necessarily expect all of you to have heard this term before, but it's your proprioception. And essentially, proprioception is your brain's conscious or unconscious awareness of how your joints are positioned in space, okay? So a solid and functioning proprioceptive system is going to be the reason that you don't have to stare down at your feet while you're walking to ensure that your toes clear without catching, right? So your brain gets sensory information about the length of those muscle fibers, because there's muscle spindle fibers and Golgi tendon organs and all these different things in our muscles and tendons that tell our brain, well, my toe extensors are shortened and my toe flexors are lengthened, and so that means that the great toe is up, which means that I don't have to pick it up any higher necessarily to be able to swing my leg through without catching my toes, right? And so another thing that proprioception is going to contribute to is like if you're walking on unlevel surfaces, inclines, declines, or a mixture of any of that, your brain is able to pick up on the changes in position of your joints so that you can keep your balance. That's what happens when our proprioceptors are functioning normally. Then we have our temporal lobe in blue. This is going to be where our primary auditory cortex is. It does have other functions than just interpreting signals of audition, but we'll get into that a little bit later. And finally, our occipital lobe in green is where our primary visual cortex is. And though the temporal and occipital lobes sound more basic because their largest job is just one thing, but they're both much more complex than that. And so we'll go into that a little bit more in another video.